There's no time for us.
In Sunderland, England, long before stage lights or standing ovations, a boy named Michael Spence was quietly shaping a future no one around him could have predicted. Living on a council estate where opportunity was limited and ambition was often exchanged for survival, Michael, now known to fans across the UK as Mickey Kalisto, developed a fascination with music not through flashy exposure or elite instruction, but through a deeply personal and unlikely source, the haunting echoes of cathedral choirs. At just 7 years old, he was transfixed by the soaring voices of the Durham Cathedral Chesters, a sound that sparked a lifelong obsession with operatic depth and emotional storytelling. With no access to music lessons or professional mentorship, Michael taught himself what he could, listening, mimicking, and experimenting until his tiny bedroom felt like his own private concert hall. Unlike other kids his age, he didn't dream of sports cars or video games. He dreamed of sounds that moved people, of symphonies born in silence. What makes this origin story more than just inspirational is its grit. His passion wasn't supported or celebrated in his environment. In fact, it was often ignored. But Michael didn't care. Every hour spent locked away with headphones on or scribbling lyrics in worn-out notebooks was another brick laid in a foundation that no one else could see. And when his classmates looked toward traditional careers, Michael was looking up, literally. Space, the stars, and the vastness of the cosmos began to feed his imagination, not just artistically but symbolically. For a boy trapped in a tight corner of society, the universe represented freedom, escape, and infinite possibility. This obsession would soon shape not only his music, but his identity. And while the rest of the world had no idea who Mickey Kalisto was, the persona was already forming in the shadows, one built on raw talent, quiet resilience, and a yearning to rise above it all. But Michael's journey was just beginning, and what came next would stretch far beyond the reaches of Sunderland, and far beyond anyone's expectations. For Michael Spence, the boy with the operatic dreams, everything pivoted the moment his voice began to change. What had once been his greatest tool, an angelic cathedral-trained soprano, suddenly slipped away with adolescence, forcing him to reinvent not only his sound, but also his entire identity. In the wake of this transformation, rather than retreat from music, he fell headfirst into an entirely different kind of inspiration, the electrifying energy of Freddie Mercury. The Queen frontman, larger than life and unapologetically bold, became a beacon for the young teen trying to rediscover his artistic voice. Michael was no longer chasing purity in sound, he was chasing power, emotion, and presence. A school production of We Will Rock You cemented that shift, revealing to him not just a new genre to explore, but a whole new way to command a stage. He didn't just perform, he transformed. Without access to tutors or proper equipment, he taught himself piano on borrowed keyboards, learning to read sheet music in the same way he had taught himself to sing, by sheer force of will. It wasn't about talent anymore, it was about reinvention, and with every new note he mastered, he began weaving the fabric of a persona that could hold the weight of this ambition. As his sound evolved, so too did his concept of performance. He started thinking theatrically, imagining not just how a song sounded, but how it looked, how it felt, and how it could be used to make people feel something unforgettable. It wasn't just about music anymore, it was about identity. Every chord became a declaration that the voice puberty had taken from him was not the end of his story, it was the beginning of something far more potent. And by the time he began dreaming up the name Mickey Kalisto, the boy from Sunderland was already shaping himself into a myth. But how did this new identity take form, and what did it truly represent? At just 14 years old, Michael Spence wasn't just dreaming about music. He was actively constructing a new persona, one that would eventually become his artistic alter ego, Mickey Kalisto. This wasn't just a stage name, it was a fully realized identity born out of both creative instinct and deep personal symbolism. The name Callisto was pulled from Callisto, one of Jupiter's largest moons, chosen not at random, but as a deliberate nod to the vastness of the cosmos that had captivated Michael since childhood. While his peers were navigating teenage drama, Michael was sketching elaborate concepts for stage costumes, experimenting with visual aesthetics, and writing lyrics that felt like transmissions from another world. Mickey Kalisto wasn't just a performer, he was a character from a galaxy of Michael's own creation, someone who could stand outside the limits of reality and invite listeners to escape with him. This transformation wasn't superficial, it was rooted in a deep desire to break free from the constraints of class, conformity, and expectation. Mickey would be flamboyant, where Michael had been quiet, fearless where Michael had been cautious, otherworldly where Michael had been ordinary. The Callisto persona allowed him to say things he'd never say in his own skin, to perform without apology, and to embrace the theatrical, gender-fluid, emotionally raw energy that traditional society often silences. In interviews, Mickey would later say he wanted his music and image to offer a portal, a way out of the mundane and into the magical. But behind the glitter and cosmic metaphors was a very real strategy. He was branding himself not just as an artist, but as an escape. Every detail from the name to the space-themed visuals was intentional. He wasn't interested in chasing trends. He was building a world, one note and one concept at a time. And while the public hadn't yet caught on, Mickey Kalisto was becoming real. First in his imagination, then in his music, and soon on the stages he always believed he belonged to. While the glittering persona of Mickey Kalisto was taking shape in secret, the real-life Michael Spence was grinding through a reality that couldn't have felt more distant from the stage. For 5 long years, he worked at a phone shop, a small fluorescent-lit corner of retail where the days blurred into one another, filled with customer complaints, technical glitches, and endless sales quotas. It was the kind of job that offered stability, but drained creativity. Yet behind that corporate smile and polite small talk was an artist quietly plotting his breakout. What most people don't realize is that Callisto's theatrical confidence wasn't built on overnight fame or viral luck. It was forged in the tension between his mundane day job and his uncompromising dream. By day, he sold SIM cards and repaired screens. By night, he transformed into the performer he knew he was meant to be. While co-workers unwound after shifts, Michael lugged synths to local bars, played open mic nights to half-empty rooms, and rehearsed alone in his bedroom long after midnight. These weren't glamorous gigs. They were trial by fire. No backup dancers, no stylists, no tech crew. Just him, a mic, and an audience that didn't know his name. Yet every show, no matter how small, sharpened his instincts and fueled his resolve. He studied crowd reactions, learned how to hold attention, and experimented with his sound in real time. There were nights he left exhausted, wondering if anyone would ever care about the music he poured his soul into. But he never stopped. Not when he was tired, not when no one clapped, not even when self-doubt crept in like a shadow. Because Mickey Kalisto wasn't just a fantasy, it was his plan. Every hour spent behind a retail counter paid for the next studio session, the next synth upgrade, the next cab ride to a late-night venue. And while most customers saw a soft-spoken employee with quirky eyeliner, what they didn't see was that they were being served by one of the most determined underground performers in Britain. The duality of his life, the dreamer and the day job, was exhausting, yes, but also vital. Because when Mickey finally did explode onto the national stage, no one would realize just how many years he'd already spent performing. For no one. When Mickey Kalisto finally appeared on Britain's Got Talent, the audience saw a flamboyant solo artist seemingly bursting out of nowhere, but what the cameras didn't show was the years of musical evolution that happened long before his audition. In fact, one of the most pivotal chapters of his career was spent not in the spotlight, but behind a bank of keyboards as part of a psychedelic rock band. This wasn't a casual side project, it was a crash course in the art of live performance, songwriting, and sonic experimentation. As the band's keyboardist and synth player, Mickey dove headfirst into the intricacies of arrangement and layering, learning how to shape moods and atmospheres that went far beyond basic melodies. Nights were spent in cramped rehearsal rooms filled with cables, analog synths, and the smell of worn-out amplifiers, crafting a sound that fused the dreamy textures of Pink Floyd with the pulse of disco and the drama of ABBA. These years taught him not just how to play, but how to feel the music in his bones, and translate it into an experience for an audience. It was here that Mickey learned the value of collaboration, how to adapt, compromise, and contribute to a shared vision without losing his own identity. Live gigs with the band ranged from tiny underground venues to outdoor festivals, each show a masterclass in reading a crowd and adjusting on the fly. This was also where he refined his ability to hold attention, to make every performance feel alive and unpredictable. But despite the lessons learned and the memories made, this chapter was almost entirely erased from his official BGT narrative. Viewers were told the story of a phone shop worker who came out of nowhere, not the reality of a musician who had been honing his craft in the shadows for years. By the time Mickey walked onto that televised stage, he wasn't an amateur taking a wild chance. He was a seasoned performer with the battle scars to prove it. And that's the part of his story the producers didn't tell you because it didn't fit the fairy tale. When Mickey Kalisto stepped onto the Britain's Got Talent stage, everything about him seemed designed to disrupt expectations, from the space-themed fashion to the quiet intensity in his eyes. But it wasn't until he opened his mouth and sang Queen's Who Wants to Live Forever that the entire room felt something shift. In under 3 minutes, a relative unknown from Sunderland became the talk of the nation. The performance was haunting, theatrical, and eerily controlled, so much so that when Alicia Dixon blurted out, "Is this Freddie Mercury or Mickey Kalisto?" it felt like a question many in the audience were asking themselves. Simon Cowell, rarely one to praise without caveats, simply said, "People are going to like you," cementing the moment as one of the most buzzed-about auditions of the season. But while the crowd erupted and the standing ovation echoed through the studio, something else was happening, online and much faster. Within hours, social media users began questioning whether what they had just seen was entirely real. Some fans claimed the vocals were too perfect, suggesting Mickey had mimed the performance. Threads exploded on Twitter and Reddit, with some alleging the segment had been auto-tuned or pre-recorded, fueling speculation that this breakout star wasn't as raw as the producers wanted viewers to believe. And yet, just as quickly, a wave of supporters rose up in his defense, citing the difficulty of the song, the emotion in his voice, and the high-pressure environment of live television. Mickey himself remained quiet during the initial controversy, allowing the performance to speak for itself. But the damage or the drama was already done. The narrative had split in two. Was Mickey Kalisto the new voice of a generation, or a heavily packaged illusion crafted for maximum impact? Regardless of which side you landed on, one thing was undeniable: he had everyone talking, and in the world of entertainment, that kind of polarizing energy is pure gold. But as the dust settled, the real question emerged: was this BGT moment a lucky shot, or the beginning of something much, much bigger? In the days that followed Mickey Kalisto's explosive BGT audition, the internet split into two camps: those who hailed him as a once-in-a-generation performer, and those who questioned whether the magic was too good to be true. Allegations of miming started quietly but soon gained traction, with armchair critics dissecting every frame of his televised performance, searching for clues: a missed breath, a perfectly timed vibrato, a camera cut that felt just a little too convenient. TikTok theories and Reddit threads speculated that the performance may have been dubbed or heavily edited, a narrative that the show's producers never directly addressed, only adding fuel to the fire. The controversy became part of Mickey's story, whether he liked it or not, and while he chose not to publicly respond, the tension surrounding his rise only intensified. Yet in a strange twist, the accusations seemed to catapult his fame even higher. Suddenly, Callisto wasn't just the flamboyant newcomer with the Freddie Mercury vocals. He was the center of a debate about authenticity in modern entertainment. Fans who had resonated with his emotional delivery and space-age aesthetic doubled down in his defense, pointing out the rawness of his local performances, many of which had already been circulating online from Liverpool's underground music scene. These weren't polished, auto-tuned showcases. They were sweaty, intimate, and undeniably real. To his loyal supporters, the miming accusations were not only unfounded but offensive, a cynical attempt to undermine an artist who had fought tooth and nail to be heard. Meanwhile, media outlets danced around the controversy, hinting at the drama while focusing on his overnight popularity. The paradox was clear: the very thing that threatened to derail his breakout moment also cemented his place in the spotlight. In a world where virality often hinges on outrage, Mickey Kalisto became both hero and headline, a performer whose mystery only amplified his appeal. Whether you believe the rumors or not, one thing was undeniable: he had people watching, talking, and waiting for what he'd do next. And behind the scenes, Mickey was already preparing to deliver something even bigger, something that would take him from controversy to cult legend. While Britain's Got Talent gave Mickey Kalisto his national debut, it was what happened next that truly defined his rise, not as a fleeting TV personality, but as a full-fledged cult icon in the making. After the cameras stopped rolling and the allegations faded into background noise, Mickey doubled down on the very identity that had made him so intriguing in the first place: a cosmic, emotionally charged performer with a flair for the theatrical and a sound unlike anything else in the mainstream. His debut EP, Homospace, dropped in November 2023 and instantly established him as more than just a BGT novelty. The project was an immersive, synth-heavy exploration of escapism and self-empowerment, packed with dreamy textures, pulsating retro beats, and lyrics that felt like transmissions from another dimension. It wasn't built for radio, it was built for resonance, and resonate it did, especially within underground club circuits and queer nightlife spaces, where authenticity and spectacle go hand in hand. In Liverpool, his adopted hometown, Callisto's meme-laced promo shows transformed into sold-out events almost overnight. What started as Instagram buzz turned into a movement, with fans donning glittery spacesuits, neon makeup, and Callisto core fashion to mimic their hero's outlandish look. And while critics were still busy arguing over his BGT moment, Mickey was building something far more enduring: a real connection with people who saw themselves in his music. It wasn't just the sound that drew them in, it was the unapologetic weirdness, the vulnerability in his lyrics, and the defiant celebration of being different. His live shows became part concert, part performance art, where emotional breakdowns were just as welcome as dance breaks. Clubbing culture, he later admitted, played a huge role in shaping not only his confidence, but also his entire performance style. It gave him space to experiment, to fail, to evolve. Now, with a rapidly growing fan base, a signature aesthetic, and a sound rooted in both nostalgia and rebellion, Mickey Kalisto was no longer riding the wave from a TV audition. He was creating his own universe. And as whispers of international gigs and a full-length album began to surface, it became clear. BGT might have introduced Mickey to the world, but it was the world he built himself that would keep him unforgettable. For all the spectacle and synth-pop glamour, what truly sets Mickey Kalisto apart isn't just his sound or aesthetic, it's the emotional depth behind his work, a mission rooted in radical self-expression and defiant authenticity. From the very beginning, Mickey has made it clear that his music isn't just meant to entertain, it's meant to liberate. At the core of his message is a belief that being different isn't a flaw, it's a superpower. His lyrics speak to the outsiders, the dreamers, the ones who've been told to shrink themselves just to fit in. Rather than conforming to industry norms or chasing trends, Mickey leans hard into the personal and the peculiar, crafting songs that feel like therapy sessions with a cosmic twist. Themes of self-discovery, emotional resilience, and mental health aren't woven subtly into his work. They're shouted through choruses, painted in synth lines, and performed with a vulnerability that borders on uncomfortable in the best possible way. He's been vocal about the importance of creating music that gives people permission to feel everything: joy, sadness, confusion, and euphoria without censorship or shame. To Mickey, the stage isn't just a platform, it's a sanctuary, a place where masks fall off and truth steps forward. This philosophy extends beyond his lyrics and into the way he lives. From his bold fashion choices to his interviews, he's unafraid to challenge expectations and speak openly about his experiences as someone who never quite fit the mold. He often says that growing up without role models who looked or sounded like him pushed him to become the figure he needed when he was younger. That idea of being the mirror someone else is searching for has become central to his growing influence, particularly among LGBTQ+ youth and creatives who feel unseen in mainstream spaces. For Mickey, music isn't just about beats or melody, it's a form of survival, a weapon against conformity, and a bridge between isolation and connection. And as his fan base grows, so does his commitment to that mission. Each new song isn't just another track on a playlist, it's another chance to tell someone, you're not alone. And in a world increasingly built on filters, perfection, and performance, Mickey Kalisto is making vulnerability not just acceptable, but powerful. In the end, Mickey Kalisto's story isn't just one of talent, it's a case study in transformation, a real-time evolution of someone who refused to stay invisible. What Britain's Got Talent packaged as a quirky underdog story was only the surface of something far more layered, the rise of a performer who built his identity from the ruins of limitation. From a council estate in Sunderland to sold-out underground shows in Liverpool, from lonely piano practice sessions to viral debates about authenticity, Mickey has taken every twist of fate and turned it into raw material for his art. But what makes him truly remarkable isn't the stage name, the cosmic branding, or even the Freddie Mercury comparisons. It's the way he's taken control of his narrative, redirecting the spotlight onto things that matter. He's not asking for approval from the industry, he's inviting people into his world, where honesty matters more than polish, and where expressing your truth isn't optional, it's necessary. And while BGT gave him a platform, it didn't define him. In fact, the show may have underestimated what they had on their hands, because what they saw as a contestant was actually the beginning of a cultural disruptor, a voice for the misfits, and a blueprint for how to turn personal chaos into creative gold. His music may sound like it's from another galaxy, but his message couldn't be more grounded. Be real, be loud, and never apologize for taking up space. And as whispers grow about international tours, new collaborations, and a potential full-length album that pushes even more boundaries, one thing is certain: Mickey Kalisto isn't fading into the background anytime soon. If anything, he's just getting started. In a world full of performers chasing likes and labels, Mickey stands as proof that the future belongs to those brave enough to be completely themselves. And if he has his way, the next time you look up at the stars, you won't just see space, you'll hear a voice echoing back, reminding you that even the weirdest dreamers deserve the biggest stage.